Many of you that have been very frustrated by cars in the past have probably sat down and wondered at some point, what idiot wrote these passages? And I have the answers for you. It's actually me. That's right, I'm sorry. But a lot of members of the MCAT Savior staff actually used to write cars passages previously. This is specifically true for third-party companies, which like to hire high-spec tutors and have them as part of their talent base. But that can be a double-edged sword because the qualifications for writing a cars passage aren't as strictly enforced by third-party companies in comparison to AAMC. Because remember, something that's really important to know is that the AAMC is a professional company. So while the third-party companies might be a lot more lax in their rules and regulations regarding who they hire to write cars passages, how those passages are written, and standard format / items that are supposed to be included in them, the AAMC isn't. This can create a very big disconnect from students when they're trying to go from third-party material all the way over to AAMC material, since the style of the cars passages varies so widely. The main way that this really becomes an issue for students is because you get used to a certain group of patterns. These patterns include everything from how the passages are written, how long they are, what type of content is covered, how the questions look, and so on and so forth. But once you get acclimated to a certain third-party company's style, and you don't spend a lot of time switching styles between different companies, it can be very difficult to then go to the AAMC, which has a very standard approach to building cars passages. At the end of the day, we don't want to cast third-party companies' cars material into too bad of a light, because we know that the AAMC has a very limited amount of actual cars material that they release. So in order for us to get better at cars, it is almost mandatory that we use third-party practice materials. The third-party companies themselves are in a very difficult situation when it comes to building that material, because the companies are always caught in this big tug of war between difficulty of the passages and clarity. As a passage becomes more and more difficult, it's pretty common that the passages are less clear. The clarity suffers. And the reason why this is a problem is pretty much because if a third-party company makes their passages a little too difficult, they're going to seem a lot less clear than passages from other companies, and students won't be inclined to buy those passages. At the same time, if you make the passages too clear, too easy, their difficulty is going to decrease, which means they're not sufficiently matching the difficulty of the AAMC. And as we know, AAMC is a professional test-taking company which has an army of professional test writers in order to write the passages and the questions in a manner that balances the difficulty and clarity. This balance is really hard to achieve for most third-party companies, because it would also require an army of professional test writers that are really well paid. And typically, most of the third-party companies really don't have that. So this is a tricky situation, but it's something that every student is going to face, especially those that are aiming to get really high scores in cars. So what do? I think the first thing that students can do is basically cycle companies. This is an approach that we pretty much recommend as baseline here at MCAT Savior, just because by switching from one third-party company to the next, you help reduce some of that exposure. For example, if you're with a certain company, you don't want to have all your test-taking habits be only built off that company's material, because who knows who is writing those cars passages. You want to expose yourself to many different test writing styles so you'll be better prepared on test day. The second thing is, and this is something that MCAT Savior is huge on, is fundamental based skills work. Because remember, the cars passages will never repeat. You'll never see a philosophy passage in the exact same way you saw it previously, but the skills that you gain, especially the ones that you've worked on in terms of reading, question deciphering, test taking, and timing strategy, those skills will transfer among passages. So the more you work on those skills, the greater the percentage chance you have to get higher scores on future passages. Finally, this one's going to sound a little weird, but we want students to never doubt their skill. If you're a student that's missing the majority of questions in a cars section, you probably have a lot of work to do. But for example, let's say that you've gotten pretty experienced at cars, and for some reason in all of these random third-party tests, you keep on missing one or two questions randomly that you swear you had the appropriate answer to, but the question key says that you're wrong and that there's a whole bunch of reasons for it. Remember, cars is subjective. The reason and logic basis for the answers to each of the questions can vary depending on the question writer themselves. So a lot of students who are higher spec in cars and are actually really good at cars often get into this doubting game where they miss a couple questions here and there on third parties and all of a sudden think that their skills are inadequate. Don't doubt your skills, especially if you're confident in them. Always just feel free to let a question go and just think about it as a badly written question instead of spending 20 to 30 minutes trying to decipher why you were wrong. Not every single question will be a great learning experience for you. Whereas on the AAMC, almost all of the questions you deal with are probably going to be very good learning experiences. So keep these facts in mind as you navigate yourself through the third-party material, and hopefully this helped. Alright, that was a complicated lesson. If you still need help, check out our full-length blog post that we linked in the video description, explore more of our YouTube channel, or just head on over to MCATsavior.com where you can get all of our strategy courses for free.